KonekoKitten was a Roblox and commentary YouTuber with over 1 million subscribers, one who recently deleted their channel following allegations of predatory behavior. I'd like to take a closer look into this situation. It's not every day that a channel with over 1 million subscribers suddenly disappears from the internet. And in the case of this situation, not only would this not have been a problem for the content creator if they hadn't have publicized this and set themselves up for failure by lying in the first place, but also based on very limited information and the one-sided narrative people had in the public's eye, viewers had a completely different perspective, and that has only been changed because of a response from the victim of KonekoKitten that was released 2 weeks ago and flipped the entire story on its head. In this video, I'd like to take a look at the KonekoKitten predator allegations, how this situation went under the radar for over 2 years, and how it led to the eventual deletion of a channel with over 1 million subscribers. Though before that, I'd like to take a second to talk directly to some of the members of my audience. Yeah, that's you guys. I think it's obvious that across the past year, I have not uploaded as much as I or anyone in the audience would have liked, failing to tackle situations in time and delivering videos that weren't up to the level of quality that you expected from the channel. With me spending more time giving into the perfectionist inside me and not enough time on actually uploading content, focusing more on making every video as perfect as it could be and trying to do some new and wacky take on commentary videos when it wasn't necessary, and frankly it isn't sustainable. I wasn't happy with the quality of my videos when I was uploading daily, so I went completely the opposite way and stopped uploading at all. I burnt myself out overthinking it and lost sight of what I actually enjoyed about making content. I've made some videos I'm incredibly proud of across the past year, but I've also disappointed myself by not committing to projects and failing to deliver them on time. I've made more excuses than I can count to avoid admitting that I was the problem. And so, right now, I'm saying that I am done with that. I'm committing myself to delivering a single video every single day from Monday to Friday. I uploaded a video yesterday, it's on the Dream allegations, and I think it's a really good video if you want coverage of that situation. So if you'd like to check that one out and show it some support, it was not received well. YouTube did not promote the video, and I would appreciate if you could go watch it and show your support. 2 weeks ago, I also released a video that was very different from my regular content. It was a response to Chris Chan's response to the allegations of incest. That is a word vomit sentence, but we'll move past it. I tried something new with the thumbnail, and it is a very different take on the content I produce, and I'd love to see what you guys thought of it. I'm sure it goes without saying, but subscribing to the channel, leaving a like, and maybe even writing a comment does more to support me than you could ever realize. And considering I'm making daily uploads again, I would appreciate if you could show that support so that YouTube doesn't throw me out into the trash. Moving that out of the way, let's get back to the video you actually wanted to watch. In January of 2021, KonekoKitten released a 55-page Google document on a Minecraft YouTuber called Narpy with over 700,000 subscribers. This document was catastrophic to Narpy's career, leading to him leaving the internet for over 2 years following it. The document would allege claims of predatory behavior, emotional manipulation, and the weaponization of self-harm to force someone into a sexual relationship. On October the 28th of this year, Narpy would release a response video to these allegations and other claims he wanted to address, also levying claims against KonekoKitten that led to his eventual deletion of his channel.
In Koneko's document, he spoke extensively about my behavior towards him in 2020 and that I would use my self-harm to manipulate him into spending time with me. He provided multiple screenshots of our private messages to validate those claims. I'm not going to deny any of that. To say that I treated him extremely poorly would be an understatement. I was manipulative, and I did hurt myself, and I did send him those pictures. There is no excuse for my behavior, and I deserve to be called out for that.
I really appreciate that Narpy starts this response by acknowledging and owning up to the mistakes he did make. It shows transparency and a willingness to learn and change. Directly owning up to the ugly truth and not watering it down allows people to see that you are being entirely forthcoming and will benefit this video in the long run. It gets the mistakes he did make out of the way, shows he's not ignoring them or excusing them, and allows us to segue directly into the claims that aren't true, and his response.
In the document, Koneko states that our relationship was very one-sided, in the sense that he didn't reciprocate intimately or sexually to me much or at all. I would like to correct this and prove that not only was our relationship not one-sided, but that it was rather mutual, and it had went on for many months. A trigger warning, these following screenshots are extremely explicit and sexual. For some context, these screenshots are from a video I recorded of our conversations long after we'd had them. The deleted user is me, but the account actually isn't deleted. I had just renamed it to that. The earliest recorded sexual encounter I had with Koneko was in September of 2019. I believe we had earlier encounters, but this is all I had recorded. This screenshot was from the same time. However, I excluded some messages here because it shows an explicit picture of me that I do not want to be shown publicly. Here's a conversation from a few days later where I had another sexual encounter with Koneko. And here's a conversation from the same time later that month. I had many more sexual encounters with Koneko around this time. However, my point was that this was not a one-sided relationship. Koneko and I both did this willingly and mutually. Koneko had stated in his document that he never once asked me for nudes. This is completely untrue, and I had never sent him a nude without his permission.
This information will become particularly relevant in a few seconds, but it shows up front that KonekoKitten was not transparent in the information he shared within this document, and was actively lying to make himself look better in regards to this relationship. This was a 3-year age gap relationship between a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old, which makes it illegal and morally dubious, which makes KonekoKitten's willingness to lie about it much more concerning. This was an attempt from Koneko to frame this as if he was a victim of someone's advances, and that he was not a participant in this advance, and as such wants this person to look worse. But that's not the truth, and it's a major red flag when it comes to KonekoKitten's testimony.
At the time Koneko made his document, he deleted a bunch of our chat logs. The reason I believe he did this was so that he could capture a very specific narrative in his document. And the reason he didn't delete all the evidence is because I suspect that at the time, he didn't realize that the account actually was not deleted. Here's a screenshot where Koneko admits to deleting messages from our conversations, and here's another screenshot where he mentions that the document was cherry-picked. Here are the screenshots from a conversation where he very clearly deleted messages, as my side of the conversation makes absolutely no sense if those were his only messages. His document states that he grew uncomfortable with the pace of our friendship and how fast it had moved from casual to sexual. He also stated that he shut it all down in October of 2019. However, this is not true. We continued to be until December of that year, 1 month before I would turn 18. Here's a conversation from December of 2019 where we were still lewd with each other. As mentioned, we stopped right before I had turned 18, and this took a big toll on me, because I thought that I would be with him after I'd turned 18, when in reality, that was not the case, and he became distant from me. In January of 2020, I would start talking to other guys, and I would send Koneko screenshots to try to make him jealous to get him to take me back. I ended up impulse dating somebody who was 16 at the time, turning 17 in a few months. I broke up with this person in March of 2020, and our relationship only lasted 3 months. I only really dated this person to make Koneko jealous. I don't think he stopped being with me because I had turned 18, but rather at the time there was a family incident and he needed to attend to it. I should have just given him space and moved on myself. However, Koneko for the first time made me feel a true connection to somebody, and this had blinded me and hindered my better judgment. Later on in 2022, Koneko would admit privately to me that he did try to lead me on when I was 17, and that only after we had tried to break things off did I become a. He would also go on to state that he was fully consensual towards the news I would send him, and that his document was extremely cherry-picked to paint a narrative.
Seeing this document so effortlessly dissected by Narpy destroys any semblance of credibility KonekoKitten may have had. Deleting sexual chat logs with someone to frame the narrative as if you were a victim to uncomfortable sexual advances when you were in fact receptive of these advances and willingly engaged with them dissolves the very foundation that your relationship with your audience is built on, erasing any chance for your audience to trust any testimony you give past this point and recontextualizes testimonies and evidence you've given in regards to prior situations. I do think it's relevant to draw attention to Narpy's comment, where they say that they do not believe KonekoKitten broke off this relationship because they were going to turn 18, but because of an unrelated family issue that they were dealing with in their personal life. I believe Narpy's own perspective is relevant, and also that I think you should come to your own conclusion based on the evidence.
The next section I want to cover are the and grooming accusations made against me in Koneko's document. Koneko had made statements and linked threads accusing me of being a pedo and a groomer, and urged people to believe this as fact while providing no evidence for those claims. In 2019, while I was still close with Koneko, I would talk to him about Red, and I had told him the true story about what happened. I also told him that my screenshots with Red had been taken out of context. However, he still felt the need to include this in his document. Unfortunately, this ended up being the most reposted section of his document, and these false groomer and allegations would end up sticking to my name for the years that followed. Also, in Koneko's thread, he mentioned that I flirted with a minor in my Discord server by calling them daddy material. This thread has since been deleted off of Twitter, but Wayback Machine still has it. I did not do this, and I have never flirted with random people in my public voice chats. When these claims were alleged, I was at the peak of my YouTube. I find it hard to believe that if I had joined a voice channel and flirted with a minor, that there wouldn't be a voice recording of me doing so. It blows my mind that these claims were taken at face value, without a clip of me doing anything. He would also then later admit to me that he knew these claims had no substance and was prioritizing his own career over mine.
This behavior in particular leaves a sour taste in my mouth. It is beyond despicable to share and endorse allegations of predatory behavior that you know to be false to save your own skin and destroy the reputation of someone who you know has dirt on you. The word vile doesn't begin to express how utterly deplorable I consider this behavior, and reading Koneko's confession to this behavior makes me concerned for two incredibly important reasons. The first being why this person even has a platform in the first place. I do not believe this is behavior consistent of that of a channel deserving of 1 million subscribers. The second being whether this person has acted in this way in the past, whether they have ruined other people's lives over claims like this knowing they're false, or whether it was just because this person in specific had dirt on him that he knew would make him look bad. Either way, I think it's incredibly embarrassing that this wouldn't have been a public issue, and KonekoKitten would not be in the position he's in right now if he hadn't in the first place impulsively released this Google Doc to call someone out who otherwise would not have published this information. His own actions are his own downfall. He made a Google Doc where he lied about the situation, spread false claims that he knew would come back to get him, and even deleted evidence to make himself look better. How stupid do you have to be to set yourself up for failure like this? I'm presuming it was probably guilt that led to him making these impulsive decisions and putting him in the position he's in now.
In 2022, I reached out to Koneko apologizing and owning up privately for my mistakes in 2020. As I mentioned in the intro, I had been thinking about making a video like this for a long time. However, every time I would approach Koneko, he would constantly dodge and stall whenever I requested him to own up to his mistakes in the document. In this screenshot here, I call him out and speculated as to why he was so hesitant to own up to his own mistakes, that being because of the potential backlash he might receive due to him being sexual with me when I was 17. He assured me that this was not the case, however, I was not convinced, and then he mentioned that I might look bad because of Naku. For those who don't know, Naku was a 16-year-old girl Koneko dated back in 2019 while he was 20 years old. Koneko and Naku were together while him and I were being sexual with each other over Discord. After they broke up, Koneko would go on and make a statement about their relationship, justifying it by claiming that their relationship was purely platonic and that he was not a pedophile because he was not sexual with Naku. I have no idea about their relationship dynamics as we barely spoke about that. The only thing I want to address are his justifications. He had claimed that he was asexual with near zero interest in 18+ activities. Koneko was in no way asexual during this time, as he had been extremely sexual together with me during 2019 when I was 17 years old, while him and Naku were still together. As mentioned previously in this video, our sexual interactions would come to a stop in January of 2020, right before I had turned 18. His relationship with Naku would last an additional 9 months, before eventually coming to an end in September of 2020, around the time that she was turning 18. As I've mentioned previously, I have absolutely no idea about Koneko's relationship with Naku, or about why it stopped. I also know next to nothing about her. The only point I want to address was his claim of being asexual during this time, which is just completely false.
I think the fact Koneko was dodging and stalling on actually responding to these claims speaks volumes about whether he actually feels regret for his actions. Koneko says that he's not doing it on purpose, and makes a plethora of justifications as to why he's delaying it, saying that he's not scared of the consequences of his own actions or being perceived in a certain way by people, but that simply doesn't feel like it rings true. And once again, it feels like KonekoKitten lying. This is someone that I struggle to trust the word of based on how inconsistent their story has already been and how clearly and apparently they lied. In reference to KonekoKitten and Naku's relationship, I think just the prospect of being 20 dating a 16-year-old is already enough for there to be concern. I think the coincidence of Koneko leaving them when they were turning 18 as well strikes me as a red flag in itself. And I'd also like to add that it is entirely concerning that KonekoKitten would claim that he was asexual at this time, and as such wouldn't behave that way towards this person when there is clear evidence that he was behaving in ways with other parties. His testimony and the testimony of other people are entirely incongruent, and I am more likely to trust the person who's providing actual evidence and being forthcoming over KonekoKitten at this point. Though I know Koneko actually properly responds to this claim later on, and so I will save my judgment until then.
2 weeks ago, when I reached out to Koneko and told him that I was making this video, I pleaded with him to try to make a statement retracting the impeachment allegations he made against me. Although he had promised many months prior that he would do this, he would ultimately go back on his promise and reject the idea entirely. Instead, he would deflect and talk about my actions during 2020, using his grandfather as a pivot point and blaming me for the time he'd lost. I continued to pressure him to come forward, but he never gave in. He continued to deflect and dodge accountability. However, he ended up offering to record a voice note for this video, but this wasn't really something that I was interested in. I told him that I wanted him to own up to his mistakes on his platform, not mine. Strangely enough, after I had spoken to my community explaining why I had been inactive for the last few days and why I missed a couple streams, Koneko felt the need to speak publicly about me, owning up partially to some of his mistakes. He would go on to send this message in a Discord server with a bunch of large YouTubers after he was alerted to messages from my server. He also made a tweet stating similar things. He goes on to state that he lied about being manipulated and being forced into sexual situations with me, that our relationship was not one-sided but was rather entirely mutual, that he led me on when I was 17, and that he knowingly included false pedo and groomer allegations against me to make his side more believable. He severely downplays those statements and the damage his document did to me. In the Discord message to his friends, he worded it to come across that he was not aware of how much damage the document would do to my reputation, but fails to mention that he had his friends reach out to Keemstar so that his document could get more traction and ultimately do more damage. To me, this recent statement was a last-ditch effort from his side to try to save face after he realized that I was actually going through with making this video. As I mentioned before in the intro, this is not the first time that I have wanted to speak publicly about everything. I had reached out to Koneko many times in the past, but I had been extremely scared about saying anything publicly, fearing that things would get worse for me, or that Koneko would just strong-arm me like how he done many times before in our DMs. I am really glad that he decided to own up and admit to some of the things he did wrong. However, I am disappointed that he did it in such a disingenuous way. He claims that he feels guilty and that he feels really bad about everything, yet he only came forward once he realized that his attempt to manipulate me into silence hadn't worked this time, and I was still coming forward with my side of the story. The statements he made this week were not made out of guilt or because he feels sorry. He made these statements as a last effort to save his own skin, and for that I am truly disappointed.
I completely agree with Narpy's conclusion based on Koneko's behavior following Narpy's message and intent to publish a video about this situation. It does not strike me as the behavior of someone who is forthcoming or feels guilty and responsible for their own actions, but someone who has been caught red-handed and is now trying to save face in whatever way they may be able to. If KonekoKitten truly felt apologetic for the behavior he had participated in, he would have been willing to apologize like this off of his own back. And in fact, I would like to believe he would have pushed for the apology and pushed to make it clear that he was sympathetic, instead of pushing this video off and going back on his promise to properly address everything until he was pushed into a corner with no other option. Upon this video being released and its reception from the public, KonekoKitten would make a response and apology video to Narpy, while addressing some of the claims and making defenses for himself on certain points.
Statement that I recently put onto my main Twitter account was very much emotionally charged and written on a whim. So I've gotten past that point and would really like to just be upfront about everything here. A couple years ago, I had a relationship with another YouTuber under the name of Narpy, whom of which recently came out with a YouTube video talking about a Google document that I made a few years ago surrounding his behavior, and going into details about our personal relationship. Considering the age difference was barely above 2 years, I didn't really see much of a moral issue with it back then.
I appreciate that KonekoKitten made an attempt to be honest with his audience and finally address this situation in a video, but immediately it comes across as if he's not being forthcoming, with him describing this relationship as being a barely over 2-year age gap.
Barely above 2 years.
Or showing a screenshot on screen of the age gap that clearly highlights that it was over 3 years.
Barely above 2 years.
Immediately not a good look, and does not bode well for the transparency of this video. You could argue that maybe this was a mistake, but it's definitely a hefty one to make when it comes to an age gap.
Before I go into talking about our relationship, I do need to talk about context, which is the document that I made. A few years ago, back in January 2021, I released a lengthy Google document detailing various amounts of abusive behavior that Max was displaying towards several friends and me at the time. And at the time that I wrote this document, it was the climax of our relationship, when he was being extremely abusive towards me, and I wrote that really purely as a way to try to exit the situation that was ongoing with him. I obviously could have handled this in a much different and better way than a manipulative one-sided document, and I do apologize for doing that. This document is very manipulative, and it paints our entire relationship to be as if it's one-sided, or that I never gave in or was complicit with this relationship whatsoever. I made several excuses for my actions in this relationship and made it seem like it was not a mutual relationship between the two of us. And for that, I am sorry for that.
It is great that the record has finally been set straight and Koneko has acknowledged that this document was one-sided and spread a false narrative about Narpy that ruined his career. However, I think even in doing so, he's using evasive language and downplaying the severity of his own actions and how badly he lied. He provides ample preamble to make himself look better while making Narpy look worse before delving into this document, and I think that was intentional as a way to make himself look better so that people can look past this, because Narpy was a to him. And while Narpy's actions are not excusable, that doesn't excuse Koneko lying about him, platforming false allegations, and editing evidence to make him look worse.
I did not once call him a grr or a pedophile inside of this document, but I did include old allegations, which very much could have made it seem like that was the case. I personally knew these allegations inside of the document to be false, and they were included inside of it to point out manipulative behavior that he had done towards other people. Obviously, the wording inside of the document could be done a lot better, and I could totally understand how it looks like and how it would totally direct people to believe otherwise. I cannot deny that the effects that this document had on him when it initially published was very devastating for his career. And at the end of the day, the times that I have talked to Max about this specific document, he wasn't against the fact that I made it if it were about a manipulative behavior. If it were a 5-page document going over that, we wouldn't even be talking about this right now. The issue that I had in this document was the fact that I never took any real accountability for my parts in the relationship, and again, made it seem like it was completely one-sided when it was very much a mutual thing between the two of us.
The language here is still incredibly particular to make KonekoKitten look as good as possible while still acknowledging fault. He acknowledges that the way the allegations against Narpy were presented in the document may make it look as if he was agreeing with them, or as if those allegations were a particular way, but that wasn't the actual intent, and that was just the way the document was made and a mistake in how it was formatted and written. When I would argue this was an insidious and intentional attempt from KonekoKitten to platform false allegations and smear Narpy's name with claims. I do not like the way this video is worded, and I think it is incredibly malicious. Transparently so.
The next 2 years following this document, there was no resolution towards it, and there is a lot of reasons for that. I want to go ahead and say it up front that I do believe I was just a coward, afraid of my own actions and afraid of my own choices. I shouldn't be like that anymore. I'm a different man now, and I shouldn't be afraid to own the shitty choices that I made when I was a complete degenerate a few years ago. But within seriousness though, right after everything between me and Max went down, I got chugged into the situation with Fire Sale and my real life friends. And that basically took over my life for the year following. I really only got back in contact in around June 2022. And this is right after I had exited everything regarding that situation, when I was very mentally unwell and absolutely not in any position to be talking to anybody, let alone him. Ultimately, my end thoughts on the document that I made almost 3 years ago is that it never should have happened, and I was in zero position to be making a document on him at all. And I regret that a lot, and I am sorry, and I have been for a very long time. I did remove this document years ago myself, as I have not agreed with it in a very long time, but it does not undo the damage that it did to him.
I can agree with KonekoKitten on the fact he was a coward, and that was probably the reason why he hasn't addressed this situation until now. His own fear of his own actions. But I think his response past this point is kind of disingenuous. Everyone's heard the tired excuse of, I'm a different person now. And I was in a dark place. I appreciate that KonekoKitten was dealing with personal struggles in his life, but this is still not the correct way to frame this narrative. He emphasizes that these were choices he made when he was a complete degenerate, and highlights that this was a few years ago. He wants to distance himself as much as possible from the actions he was a participant in, going as far as to clearly emphasize that this Google document was wrote almost 3 years ago, as if that changes how responsible he is for his own actions and makes him any more redeemable. Own that shit. Narpy's video was much more transparent and responded to the actual true claims much better than Koneko ever has, and he's had many more opportunities to do it than Narpy had.
Showcase some chat logs from our relationship back then, which are very degenerate, to say the least. I would like to say that these chat logs are authentic, they are true, and they are me on the other side of the conversation. It is not something that I'm proud of, and I have long grown out of being a degenerate seen people on Discord. I am not at all proud of these conversations, and I haven't been in several years, but I do need to show them to show that I was at one point a very degenerate young man online. I think taking one look at how I used to look 4 to 5 years ago kind of just immediately proves my point and why I feel nothing but ashamed of really everything.
As mentioned, we stopped right before I turned 18, and this took a big toll on me, because I thought that I would be with him after I turned 18, when in reality that was not the case and he became distant from me. In January of 2020, I would start talking to other guys and I would send Koneko screenshots to try to make him jealous to get him to take me back. I ended up impulse dating somebody who was 16 at the time, turning 17 in a few months. I broke up with this person in March of 2020 and our relationship only lasted 3 months. I only really dated this person to make Koneko jealous.
You gotta understand, this is the very first time I've ever heard him say this to me, was in this YouTube video. So this is kind of a lot for me to take in. I did not become distant from Max, and this is something I need to state here. My conversations with him throughout 2020 clearly show me being there for him, and I did not hang him out to dry or to die. So this idea that I stopped being close to him or I stopped being affectionate towards him at all the second that his birthday ran around is not true, and something that I will deny. I am not trying to shift blame towards him whatsoever. I believe at the end of the day, these are conversations that should have not happened in the first place. And that is entirely on me in the end, as somebody that should have been far more responsible with it. This is something that he himself even stated in his YouTube video, where he talked about that he didn't feel that I stopped because of anything, but really just because of the family situations I had going on at the time.
I don't think he stopped being with me because I had turned 18, but rather at the time there was a family incident and he needed to attend to it. I should have just given him space and moved on myself. However, Koneko for the first time made me feel a true connection to somebody, and this had blinded me and hindered my better judgment.
These are situations that I vocalized to him inside of our messages at the time, that he hadn't done anything wrong, and that I was dealing with some seriously personal stuff at the time and wasn't able to provide as much as I used to. I do believe that his mental instability and his unwellness did stem for our relationship not going anywhere.
I think Koneko's admission of these conversations is valuable, and the fact that he doesn't try to discount Narpy's experience is a good idea, because downplaying this in even the slightest way would not have worked well for him. Though I don't believe his response to this is all that strong, I do believe that at least it provides closure to the situation. A particular part of this video that I do value is KonekoKitten talking about Max's comments about him leaving him out to dry after he turned 18, with Koneko providing chat logs that showed that this was not the case and that he believes that he was still there for Narpy after that point. This is good evidence, shows that maybe Narpy's account, when not providing evidence, isn't as reliable as we maybe thought, and also discounts the argument that potentially Koneko was leaving these people after they turned 18, particularly because he was seeking people under the age of 18, which is a claim I'm sure would have been pushed around otherwise. And while I believe people can still come to their own interpretations about the coincidence between the age and Koneko cutting off any kind of sexual interaction with this party, I don't believe Narpy believes that, and I personally do not believe there's enough evidence to support that claim.
The next thing he did inside of this YouTube video was bring up my relationship from nearly half a decade ago with Miss Keeping, because of one screenshot conversation that I had back in July 2022, something that I've already stated when I was not in the place to be talking to this guy at all. Our age difference is roughly around a 3-year, 9-month age difference. I turned 20 years old shortly after we had begun dating, and it definitely was a very weird look for me almost half a decade ago. I will firmly stand by the fact that I was not intimate whatsoever towards her in this relationship, and we were purely platonic. The relationship itself also did not break any laws, so I have really nothing else to add about it past that point. Throughout this relationship, though, I was heavily defended by everyone inside of the Roblox community when this was ongoing, which made me feel in good company regarding things. The mindset and mentality I had back then was, if it's legal, it doesn't matter, which in hindsight was incredibly fucking stupid, but it has been almost half a decade ago at this point. I think this statement that I made several years ago regarding our breakup and our relationship in general is certainly worthy of criticism. I have given honest responses about our breakup to people before that have gone unseen, where the reason we broke up initially was because I was morally uncomfortable by the relationship, and recognized that we were both in completely different parts of our lives. Me and Miss Keeping have remained very good friends over the years and have kept in contact ever since that point. And ever since she was included inside of this YouTube video, she's been nothing but stressed about it and wanted no inclusion in it whatsoever. She was not given a heads up, she was not asked. Again, I believe that it is worthy of criticism. I am fine with that. But I just do not think that this video was the place to do. And if you were seriously trying to bring that up as a point, the most and the bare minimum you could have done is just reach out to her or at least give her a heads up beforehand. This idea that is going around that I stopped caring about her the second that we broke up is completely and entirely false, and is proven easily by the fact that we still actively talk and are friends to each other.
As I've mentioned previously, I have absolutely no idea about Koneko's relationship with Naku, or about why it stopped. I also know next to nothing about her. The only point I want to address was his claim of being asexual during this time, which is just completely false.
I did not lie here. I am asexual. What I am, though, is an umbrella term under the asexual category called gray sexual. which is somebody that only experiences this attraction some of the time, but not at all. I don't actively seek in relationships. It's not something that's a priority for me, and it never particularly has been.
I understand why it would be argued that Narpy should have reached out to KonekoKitten's previous partner if they wanted to bring them up within the video, just so that that person was aware and wasn't blindsided by this coverage, and I won't make any excuse for that. Whether you think that was a detrimental decision or whether you think it was just a minor mistake is up to you guys. I don't think it needs to be said that believing that this relationship was okay because it was technically legal is a bad stance to have, and I'm sure that eventually the morality behind this relationship was the reason why KonekoKitten ended it. Do I question why it took him so long to realize that? My biggest issue with this segment of the video is KonekoKitten's comments about being asexual, as I think we can all tell, and it is very clear that in his initial response, he was not being entirely forthcoming. Arguing that you were asexual as a defense for the fact you were dating a 16-year-old at 20 is a clear and cut and dry response made with the obvious intent to immediately remove any insinuation that you may have behaved in a sexual way with this person. Though in reality, it is not that black and white, and it's actually a closer shade to grey. You do participate in sexual acts, and you do feel sexual attraction, even to particular people or in a small way. The defense that you are asexual and as such that argument can be used against you falls on its face when people can see that you have engaged with other parties in the past and did enjoy it. You can argue that you weren't sexual with this person in specific, but to claim that you weren't because you were asexual is a misleading way to frame it, and I don't appreciate how KonekoKitten is so unwilling to be entirely transparent. We all know that isn't what you meant with your initial response or the impression that it gave, and as such, that point of defense falls apart regardless, and your response here just makes you seem worse.
I personally do not have anything else to add from Max's video. I have said my piece regarding all of that. I put out a public statement onto my Twitter account, and this is pretty much all I'm going to say moving forward regarding the situation. I was a degenerate, manipulative person a couple years ago, and I make zero denial or excuses for my actions. I should have known better, and I did end up hurting him in the end from that. And if Max ends up seeing this video by chance, I do want to say that I am sorry for it. I believe I am better suited to be offline for a long time. I don't want a large online platform, and I'd prefer to be to myself to continue working on things. I am not the degenerate loser that I was almost half a decade ago, seeing people on Discord like that, but I will say at this point that I did have some issue of accepting accountability in the end. And to Max, I am sorry for that. The path that I have been on has been almost completely offline, and I've been embracing nature and life in of itself to try to improve myself. I've been doing this for the past year and few months now, and that's really the path I want to continue to keep going down. I also found God earlier this year, and I've regularly been partaking in Bible studies since April. I will continue going down the path that I'm on, and if I need to upload anything for myself online, it's going to be on my alternative YouTube channel, where that is my personal outlet that I've had, and is completely disassociated from any sort of Roblox-related communities. I am not the man that I was anymore, but in order to accept that, I must kill the man that I was by publicly accepting my faults.
Unsurprisingly, this response was not received well, and KonekoKitten would later delete this video while providing a community post further apologizing and trying to rectify this video's apology. The community post would read the following: I have chosen to remove my response video as I recognize that it downplays myself pretty significantly. I have watched it over and over again, and there are times even there that I was downplaying myself. There is so much worse shit that I did with Narpy, and I seriously downplayed that. I will not resurface online ever on here, and do not feel I deserve a platform online. I can say I have changed all I want, but I believe it shows a pretty bad pattern of dishonest, manipulative behavior from me. I need to really figure out why I'm like this before I ever really step online again. I don't do weird shit anymore, and I'm glad I can own that. I have long stopped being like that. But I was so degenerate and deplorable years ago with my actions that I do not believe it personally justifies me posting online. I'm going to remain offline for an indefinite amount of time. I will not return here. My next focus from here is figuring out why I am like this, because it isn't healthy for me whatsoever. The way I socialize isn't healthy, and it is not healthy for me to be here when I clearly have problems to still assess. This response seems to be KonekoKitten finally being more transparent with his audience, admitting that there are much worse things he's participated in than they let on, and that he shouldn't have a platform given the behavior he has participated in. And I believe that honestly, he's probably right in coming to that conclusion. He shouldn't have a platform if he's going to misuse it to such a reckless degree, and if he's such a degenerate weirdo behind the scenes. Though this would not be his final comment on the situation, as KonekoKitten would release one final video responding to the claims before deleting his channel.
A few weeks ago, Narpy published a lengthy video explaining our relationship. I wanted to take time to thoroughly talk about my relationship with him. I've had a couple weeks offline to properly think about things, and I had previously published a response online regarding everything a couple weeks ago, which I feel were very flawed and emotionally charged. I instantly admitted guilt, said everything in his video was true, and left. I ended up removing my response shortly after it was published, as I felt like it downplayed things inside of the video and didn't really go into much detail, and I needed to reassess everything and figure out how to properly respond. I apologize for taking the time that I have on it. I previously sent him an email a week ago regarding our relationship, which I came to the conclusion that I still feel it's necessary to add context after seeing a video by YouTuber Lanza, which described our relationship much more in depth than any other video I've ever seen. It helped me remember everything with him that happened between us and several other people. This video will be going into several different sections, including our relationship, our fallout, the document I created, and how I handled everything following our fallout. There will also be other things mentioned for contextual purposes, and throughout this video I will be referring to him as Max. I would please ask that you watch the entire video before coming to any conclusions, and to put any previous feelings you've had about my other responses aside for my explanation of this. The purpose of this video is to provide crucial context that was missing from Max's video. In the summer of 2019, I met Max through mutuals, and we began talking and became friends very quickly, as we were both popular content creators and related to each other a lot. He was 17 years old, turning 18 in 3 months, and I was 20 years old. Our age gap specifically was 3 years and 3 weeks apart in age, and we had gotten close and affectionate very fast, really before either of us got to actually truly know each other. I personally did not find anything morally outrageous of such an age difference. There's a lot of debate online regarding this, but in the end, this is how I felt back in 2019. Our friendship would turn into a romantic fling, where we were very intimate with one another and said that we loved each other. It was something that, as our relationship progressed, I grew greatly uncomfortable with how the relationship was, and had no idea how to communicate this to him. He would push our conversations into being constantly. I shouldn't have given into that, but I felt obligated as he was my best friend and I just wanted to make him happy. I would consider what we did very mutual. However, my mentality towards it has really already been stated. I asked him one day very nicely and politely if he could please stop pushing advances towards me. His response to this was immediately getting extremely upset at me, and he would not talk to me for several months following. From October to December of 2019, we would find ourselves not talking as much as he felt like I had no interest in him as a person, and would constantly guilt trip me about it. This is absolutely not the case, as I just was simply uncomfortable with the dynamic that we had once shared. I felt like things had moved way too fast, and didn't feel comfortable with an extremely dynamic. Something that he would constantly push and seek. Over the time period that we wouldn't talk, he would seek this from other people. He would brag to me about how he'd seek 20-plus-year-old men as a minor, and even sent me a screenshot of him initiating an intimate conversation with another adult. He was very vocal about this, and would share messages he used to flirt and engage with sexual relationships with other adults.
This information changes the narrative on the situation, and when you consider that maybe KonekoKitten wasn't entirely interested in the sexual side of the relationship, some of his own responses seem to make more sense. I think my greatest concern here is that I don't feel like I can trust the testimony of KonekoKitten, given how much he's lied in the past about the situation. He deleted sexual messages specifically because he wanted this to seem like it was a one-sided relationship and wasn't mutual. The fact he doesn't include the sexual conversations within this video seems intentional as a way to avoid actually showing how he was behaving. Before the point where he said that he would like to step back from doing more lewd actions, he was incredibly sexual with Narpy, and as far as we can tell, Narpy was not given any kind of information that would lead him to the conclusion that KonekoKitten did not want to behave in this way. And while Narpy's response after KonekoKitten told him as much wasn't great, I have never tried to defend Narpy or the actions he has owned up to, and I think both parties in this situation can be in the wrong. I still think KonekoKitten framing this as if he was giving into this behavior was malicious and not a fair reflection of the conversations, and I believe that KonekoKitten is still ultimately responsible for his own actions, not just as the adult in the situation, but also because he was actively reciprocating this behavior.
One of the other people he got this from was an old friend, who went under the name of E inside of Narpy's YouTube video. I will briefly speak upon the relationship for contextual purposes, as Max himself stated in the video that he had no idea what he did to him, and only ran off of a couple of screenshots from a few years ago. While Max was 17 and E was 18 years old, they would have a friends with benefits type relationship. Max would pressure E into sending photographs, despite E making it very clear that he was conflicted about it. Max, however, would push this even further, stating that he could simply delete the images afterwards. Max would be consistently abusive towards E, and whenever he brought this up to Max about how it was hurting him badly, Max would downplay his own actions and make him feel even worse. A year later, after Max was emotionally abusive towards him and they had a falling out, Max would go back to his messages with E and take a screenshot of them engaging in sexual behavior, and wanted to use this against him as Max was 17 and E was 18 years old. I confronted E on this myself, to which he had to share this screenshot showing Max himself absolutely pressuring these advances, which is something Max intentionally left out only up until I confronted E about it. Max was quite literally blackmailing my friend. E, rightfully, had Max blocked to this day for purposely twisting the relationship and threatening to expose him for something that wasn't true. It wouldn't stop there either, as Max would go onto his own large Twitter account and retweet memes making fun of the very person he was being abused towards, ganging up on him with his friends. He was misusing his own platforms he had to harass and bully someone that he was being abused towards. This scarred E significantly, as he was being harassed by someone who had a much larger following than him and had no chance of defending himself.
While I wish we had more screenshots to support these allegations, I do believe that this behavior regardless is incredibly concerning. Max was clearly pressuring the other person within these conversations, and I do believe that it makes Max look really bad. I think it goes without saying that after Max fell out with this person, him considering the prospect of publicizing these screenshots to ruin his life, I suppose, over the fact he was 18 being sexual with a 17-year-old, is rather ridiculous, and if these claims were publicized, they would have never stuck. With this situation, it feels like every party is so terminally online, and all of them are degenerates. And I think it goes without saying that KonekoKitten and Narpy both need to get serious f***ing help. To speak further on that, I would like to see Narpy respond to these claims and provide his own testimony, as so far I've only seen one side of this allegation. I feel like his acknowledgement of this situation in his first video though was definitely lacking.
December of 2019, Max and I would regain contact where we continued our relationship, mostly out of obligation from my part, as I did not want to upset him again by rejecting his advances. As time progressed, we stopped doing this, and around his 18th birthday in January of 2020, he would immediately begin a relationship with a person who was 16 while he was 18. I'm not calling this age gap immoral or predatory whatsoever, and anyone who tries to make it as that is a f***ing moron. I will refer to this 16-year-old as B. We would not talk much while he was dating this person. The relationship between him and Max would last a few months, where Max would engage in very reckless behavior throughout the relationship with B. Max would hook up with a stranger from an app named Howler and would be dishonest about it towards his partner. Max would be confronted about this and he admitted to cheating on his partner, promising not to do it again. Shortly after, Max would yet again cheat on B for the second time, which resulted in a large call out on Twitter regarding his behavior. In response, Max would message me privately claiming that I was the reason that he had cheated on his partner, stating that, "If you had continued to be sexual with me, I never would have cheated." This statement is incredibly important because him saying, "I really am that shitty and would have functioned that way," meaning he was completely and entirely aware of his own actions. He was not a minor when he was doing this stuff. He was an adult. I cannot speak for this person and how they currently feel about this relationship, and frankly, I don't really care nor believe it really matters here. It has been several years, and I can only assume that both of them have moved forward from this. It is merely providing important context for people to know what was transpiring behind these messages. Max's final response to this situation was going onto Twitter, threatening to take his life, and then he was put in a mental ward for over a month. I would constantly call and ask my friends on his whereabouts past this point, as I had no idea what had happened to him. He would regain contact with me in May 2020, where he and I would begin talking once more, and he seemed in higher spirits after an extremely serious situation that happened. This, however, did not last long, as he would very quickly begin to treat me like garbage again.
I would argue that outside of the hypocrisy of Max calling out someone for being 18 dating a 17-year-old is glaring when looking at Max being 18 dating a 16-year-old, but outside of that, I don't really see why this relationship and the behavior of Max within it was made public. Though since it was, I would like to say that I think it's obvious that Max was really bad to people he dated in relationships, and I think he is very aware of that based on his prior apology and admission at the start of his response to KonekoKitten. His message to Koneko was obviously unhinged and unfair, arguing that you wouldn't have cheated on this person and behaved in this way if Koneko had remained sure with you is not a fair thing to say, and considering how self-aware Max was of this behavior, it's obvious that he recognizes how f***ed up he was back then. Again, I would appreciate Max making a response or comment on this claim, as I feel there still could be context missing, and that's why I'm withholding a lot of judgment.
In his YouTube video he published a few weeks ago, when I had a conversation with him about addressing this online, he claimed I guilt-tripped him with my grandfather.
Instead, he would deflect and talk about my actions during 2020, using his grandfather as a pivot point and blaming me for the time he'd lost.
This needs a lot more context that he knows is being left out, or at least is being worded in a way to which it leaves it up to the viewer's imagination to what was really going on. In June 2020, my grandfather died. This is a very impactful moment of my life, and it's something that I let Max be aware of several times, both through Twitter and Discord. Though our logs only contain one side of our conversation, he did respond acknowledging it, and I had a very valid reason to not be close with him or anyone at the time, given that I was going through something so serious in my life. The point that I am making here before I begin talking about anything else regarding this is he was fully aware of the fact that this was going on in my life. While I was preparing to attend a funeral for my grandfather, Max would get upset at me that I was spending less time with him. I would text him while I was there, scared at retaliation from him, as if I was never doing enough for him. Shortly after I returned, he would blame me as the reason for his suicide attempts. He would send me razor blades he bought on Amazon, would black out his Discord profile picture, and never talk to me about a thing, saying, "Let's hope I die before I turn 19 years old." All while he was fully aware of what was going on and the loss in my life. We would never talk about anything at all. We would never once have a single conversation about anything going on. It was him constantly getting upset at me and growing more and more upset towards me. Me mentioning that I had a difficult time getting over how he treated me in this situation was not a guilt trip, nor was it a sympathy attempt. It's honesty. I was dealing with something so deeply personal, and he made it about himself, when this time should have never been about him. And I told him countless times, hey, my grandfather died, and it was completely ignored. I just wish he was patient towards me and understanding here, and it hurts to even think about for me. I did not give up on him or hang him out to dry. I was hurting and I needed to heal. And this specific situation occurring is what drove me away from him. I was always there for Max. I helped him with his Twitlongers that he had previously put out, and I was always emotionally there for him. But I did not know what to do considering the way he was treating me, so we ended up talking less and less. This upset him even more, which would result in him blowing up at me in November of 2020 for quote-unquote leading him on, which is just simply not true. I was not ignoring him or hanging him out to dry. I did not want a relationship with him and was uncomfortable by how fast things had progressed. He got more and more upset, threatening to eventually himself over me in November. In November of 2020, I would cut him off and ask him for space as I could not handle what he was doing. And in response to this, he would message me on Twitter with a long message. He would be extremely manipulative inside of this message, saying that I put no effort into anything and that the picture of his fist was my fault, and that I never cared for him, which, as shown, is clearly not the case. I would block him on Twitter following this exchange, where he would then stalk me onto my Telegram account to call me all sorts of things, that I was bipolar, and that I was inflating my ego by blocking him off. Given the events that I've already described for the past few months, I genuinely just could not handle how he was treating me. And after months and months of constant emotional abuse and being kicked through the mud, I produced my document about him, mainly as a way for me and several other friends trying to escape the situation that was ongoing between us. While it definitely is one-sided regarding our relationship in the document and does have flaws, the factors still stand very true, and it was genuinely ruining my life. I had no idea what the to do or how to exit this situation. I did not know how to handle him putting his up to our Discord messages saying that I did this all to him. I regret the document 100%, but in a sense I feel like it was very necessary, as I was not the only person being treated like this. It was a lot of other people who had no platform to defend themselves like E, and were constantly getting bullied by him and had no way out of it. Personally, I feel he never would have stopped had that document never been made. He was showing zero signs of stopping, considering he was retweeting memes making fun of E in December of 2020 when he was nearly 19 years old. There is a lot of other people that I haven't accounted for in this video that Max treated in a similar fashion. I only talked about things within the context of our relationship only.
I can totally understand why KonekoKitten would want to make this clear within a video, especially in regards to the grandfather situation and the way without context it was presented in Narpy's video. In the grand scheme of things, this is a much more minor point of Narpy's video to have contention with, as it is a very small paragraph in Narpy's script over a bold and overarching claim, but as it is a personal thing to KonekoKitten, I can understand why you would want to harp on this point. In regards to the other side of this point, with KonekoKitten arguing that Max was abusive within this relationship, yeah, 100%. He admitted as much, and I would think he made that very clear. Regardless, I think that behavior is deplorable, and I can understand why you would have such an issue with it. Though I will never support the Google Doc you produced, where you lied about him and platformed false claims knowing they were false, as he said he wouldn't have had an issue if the document only focused on the abuse, and I agree. That behavior is unacceptable and there is no excuse for it. I think saying his behavior would have continued to this day if the Google Doc wasn't made is a cheap way of excusing the Google Doc. If you made a correct Google Doc that properly tackled the situation, only presented the claims that were actually true and valid, and clearly drove the point home, I think that Narpy would still find themselves being publicly lambasted, and then you would be more justified in making this argument. But you still produced a hit piece that ultimately spread misinformation and slander, and you did so knowingly because you wanted to doom his career. I don't fuck with that, and I think regardless of the excuse or justification you make for it, it was still a thing to do. KonekoKitten is the only person to be blamed for why KonekoKitten deleted his own channel, and I think there is no excuse for his own actions.
Following the document situation that happened between me and him in 2021, I was thrown into an extremely situation involving two of my real-life friends. For those that do not know, one of my friends accused Fire Sale of sexual assault.
Wait, what the f? That's me! I don't even know where the f to begin. I'm not even shitting you. I did not realize this when holy f, I jump scared myself thinking someone was in my room. This is going to be a really funny outtake up weird clip in the video. I didn't even realize that I was on screen to this point, and that is very fucking funny. Thanks for watching my video to the end, Koneko. You know, actually, now I see that. Maybe we could make an understanding here. Maybe you aren't as This is a really bad joke, and I hope it doesn't come across in poor taste.
And I shifted my entire focus on making sure that this friend was safe. I'm not going to regurgitate myself on this story, but this made me very repulsed from the internet, and considering the extent of things that happened then, which is very personal and I am not going into. I exited this situation in the summer of 2022, which immediately right after, Max wanted me to make a statement regarding the document. I was not there mentally, as I had just gone through a very stressful year in my life, and realistically should have not been talking to him at all, as I ended up saying a lot of things that I regret. One of the things that I did was end up admitting guilt to him because I genuinely did feel guilty about our relationship. And after I refused to do anything, Max would cut me off in October of 2022, and my focus went to trying to fix my life. I lost a lot of weight, and I did alter my life objectively for the better by doing more positive things, like bodybuilding, trash cleanup, and trying to restore my faith. He would recontact me in May of 2023 following a swatting incident, which I helped him figure out how to protect himself and ensure his safety. We agreed by staying in contact with one another until he needed to respond, and after some Twitter posts about him blew up, he produced his YouTube video of another friend of his. He asked me before this video was made to make a statement about it, and I truly just had no idea how to go about it, as I've honestly just been trying to better myself and improve my life from what I once was. So I refused, until my friends began confronting me on the matter. Overall, the way that I handled things was quite horrible, and I absolutely have wrongs when it comes to us. It needs to be understood that this was an extremely complex situation with lots of crevices and details that needed to be said. I immediately admitted guilt and made the terrible responses that I did out of having a guilty conscience. I have been extremely vocal to him that I felt there was a lot of miscommunication between us. Like I said, we never once sat down and talked about what the hell was going on between us. And instead of like blacking out your Discord profile picture or sending me pictures of your or making me feel terrible in some of the worst parts of my life, you could have just talked to me like a normal person. I, along with countless others, was abused very badly by Max, and that is not something I'm going to sit here and downplay. I do not believe he is this person anymore, as he's been very vocal about trying to make amends with anyone that he can, but his video doesn't tell the full story. He was an extremely abusive person, and there's quite a lot of people forgiving him when it really is nobody's place to except the people that he treated like this. I do not believe he deserved a platform with how he was treating people at the time. This serves as my side regarding my relationship with Narpy, and I will not be commenting any further on it. I'm sorry I took so long to work on this, but I hope it's understandable given the amount of stress that came from all of this. In the end, none of this should have ever happened, but this is what happened between us. Again, I will remain offline from this channel, and if I need to post anything, it's going to be on Koneko. I personally have zero interest in Roblox content creation at all, and I haven't for several years. I've gone ahead and removed a lot of people from my life that I met from Roblox, and I'm going to try to be productive. I want to work on getting my GED and trying to improve my life, as that's literally all I've been trying to do for the past 3 years. I would like to thank friends of mine who have been there for me to emotionally support me throughout the past few weeks. A lot of my friends cut me off and blocked me, but there were some who were immediately there for me to reach out to ensure my safety and helped me figure out how to even properly respond to this. I never would have been able to make this video without them, and I cannot be more thankful for my friends being there for me. The final thing I want to say is the only person who ever did the slightest bit of research regarding me and Max's relationship was one guy named Lanza, who did an amazing job compiling our relationship in a non-biased manner. There was so much more to our relationship that I simply hadn't gotten around to sharing. I was not immediately prepared like Max was, as he had been preparing for this for months beforehand. I needed time to work on this and shouldn't have responded initially the way that I did, and I do apologize for that. I don't blame anyone for taking it at face value, considering my initial responses I made surrounding the situation.
And it was at this point that KonekoKitten deleted his channel that had over 1 million subscribers at that time. I believe Max was abusive, and I believe KonekoKitten made a laundry list of mistakes that I've detailed within this video, and I'm not gonna rehash that or write a perfect and clean conclusion for this video, because this situation is a mess, and I think ultimately I can only provide you the information and my personal opinion based on it, and allow you to come to a conclusion based on that information. I can't tell you how to feel, and without hearing Max's response to this video in particular, I can't give you the full story or come to a full cohesive perspective. I think ultimately KonekoKitten deleting his channel is a good thing, and I think Max should also reevaluate his next steps as a public figure. With that being said, if you are new to the channel, please do consider subscribing. I make long videos like this, I guess, almost daily, and I would appreciate your support if you can provide it. Even a like or a comment goes so far in supporting the channel and really does mean a lot. Feel free to check out my other social media if you'd like to support me over there, and obviously, as I mentioned at the start, I would appreciate if you could check out the last 2 uploads I posted on this channel, as they are videos I am incredibly passionate about and very proud of, that did not do well because I haven't uploaded in so long. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to leave a comment down below, and with that being said, I will see you tomorrow, maybe? Anyway, yeah, bye, see you soon. This is your only plan. Oh, now this is your only. Now this
force it to yield. You'll forge it to the lines. You let your callous be your shield, and everyone will say